Today I'm going to be showing you how to monetize your game with a currency system. Let's get started. Welcome to this tutorial. My name is AlvinBlox, and on my YouTube channel I create tons of scripting tutorials and tips and tricks videos. And today we're going to be learning how to add a currency system into your game. So you've finished creating your game, it's all ready to be published, but you haven't monetized it yet, so you won't be able to make any money from your players. And if you want to advertise your game, you really want to make sure that you're monetizing it so you can make a profit on your spending. So in this tutorial, we're going to create a system which will save currency for every player in your game, and we'll also be able to distribute currency to different players for, say for example, if they won a game, we can distribute some currency to them, or we can take some currency away if they were to buy something. So let's begin by inserting a script into server script service, and we're just going to call this currency script. So what we're going to say in this script, we're going to create an event which will create a folder in the player which will store all of the currency and other values, and then this will show up in game as a leaderboard. So to do this, we're going to say game.players.playerAdded :connect function PLR, just written like this. Now this is an event, and this event will run whenever a new player joins the game, and we've got an argument called PLR. Let's just change this to player so it's a little bit more understandable. So this player variable or argument is going to be the player which enters the game. Now, obviously we don't know the name yet, so we're just going to refer to them as player. So we're going to want to create a folder in that person, in that person's player object. So we're going to say local folder equals instance.new, and then in parenthesis we can say folder. Now we want to give this folder a name, so folder.name equals, and then in speech marks what we have to do is we have to call this folder a special name. We have to call it leader stats, spelt like this with a lowercase l at the beginning. Now if it's not spelt like this or capitalized correctly, it's not going to show up on the leaderboard. For your leaderboard to show up in the top right corner of the screen, it needs to be called leader stats, and then we can put all of our values inside of the leader stats. For example, we're going to have a currency. We're going to create our currency object now. So you're going to want to customize your currency to a different name than mine. So we're just going to say local currency name at the top equals, and then in speech marks you can write the name of your currency. So if you wanted to call it points, you can write points up here, or if you wanted to call it coins, you can write your currency up here. So I'm going to keep mine at coins, and then we're just going to want to create this currency value, and we're going to want to store it inside of the folder. So to do this, we're going to say a local currency equals instance.new, and then inside of these parentheses again, we're going to say int value, because the currency is going to be a number, an integer, so we're just going to choose an int value, and then we're going to say currency.name equals currency name, which is the variable we just declared. So you won't have to change the name of the currency in the code, you just have to change it at the top here, which is much more simple. And then we're not going to assign a value to it yet, because we're going to save the data, and I'll get onto that later on, because we want to load the data, we don't want to reset it. So now that we've done that, what we should do is open up the game, and the leaderboard doesn't show. Now that is because we didn't put the currency inside of the folder. So we need to say currency.parent equals folder, and we also need to put the folder inside of the player. So we're going to say folder.parent equals player. It's best practice to assign the parent of an object after you've declared all the properties. So don't say folder.parent at the start. You should declare your other properties first, such as the name, for example. So let's go and run the game now, and hopefully we should have a leaderboard. Yep, there we go. So if you have a look at the top right corner of the screen, it says our name, and also has the coins next to it. So if we go and update this value manually in the leader stats, let's change it to 500. You can 5,000 even. You can see that the leader stat has updated to 5,000, but when we leave the game, it's going to reset back to 0 whenever it decides to load. There we go. So it's reset back to 0, and if we just leave the game, we're going to start work on data saving. So we want to save the player's data whenever they leave and rejoin the game, because maybe the player wants to buy some currency. If it gets wiped when they leave the game, they're not going to be very happy because they might have just bought it. So to save data, we're going to use the data store service. And so to do this, we're going to create a variable at the top, local data store equals game colon get service, and then in speech marks we can say data store service, and then we want to get our data store, which is unique to this game. So we say colon get data store. In brackets, we're going to give our data store a name. So you can call this whatever you want. I'm going to call it, I'm just going to call it test data store. But once you've decided on a name, don't change it, else you run the risk of wiping your data, because all data saved in this data store will be local to the data store with the name of test data store. So if you went and published your game now and people went into your game and saved some data and later on you changed it to a different name, all of that data is going to be wiped. So you need to keep it at test data store. So now that we've done that, what we want to do is we want to create a unique identifier for each player's data. Now the way data store works is there'll be a key for each player, and so each key will have a value assigned to it, and so this key can look like this. I'm gonna call it ID. So local ID equals, I'm gonna give it a name, so name of our currency, and then we can say dot dot, and then we can say player dot user ID. Now it's not good practice to put the player's name in the data store. It's best to use their user ID. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna give this currency name dot dot player ID. So this is concatenating two things together. So it's actually what we're going to do is we're going to have some speech marks and then another dot dot. I'm going to have a hyphen in between it. Now what this is going to look like is, because our currency name is coins, it's going to look something like this: coins hyphen and then the player's user ID. Now because each user ID is unique to a player, you're not going to get somebody who has the same key as someone else. So what we can do is we can use this key to reference data for a specific player and load it and save it. So this ID is basically just used to store a player's data and to find it whenever we want to load or save something. So what we're going to want to do now is we're going to want to get the saved data from this ID. So to do this, we can say local saved data equals data store, which is what we just declared up here. We've got our data store and we want to get async. And what this does is it looks for any data that is saved in this player's ID, and then we're just attributing it to this variable so that we can come back to it and we can easily reference it. So we want to put the player's ID in here because we want to get the data for this user. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to check to see if they've already got some data, because if they've already got data in this variable, if it's already been saved, we know that they're not a new player. So if they're a new player, we want to give them a default amount of cash, but if they're not, we want to load their data. So that's what we're going to do right now. But of course there is the chance that something might go wrong whilst the data store is trying to get someone's data, or there's an error. So what we want to do here with this get async is we want to wrap it in something called a p call, and what that will do is it will if there is an error, it will just handle the error and move on. So it won't create a massive error which will stop the entire script from working. It will just handle it and move on. So to do this, we're just going to say p call function and then a pair of parentheses, and we're just going to wrap our get async line of code in here. So that should make sure that the script doesn't completely break if something goes wrong. And what we want to do is we want to check to make sure that this data that we're trying to load is actually there and that this player isn't brand new. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if, save data. In fact, what we're going to do is we're just going to take this save data out of local here, and we're going to say local saved data equals nil. So we're defining it up here because if there was an issue and this saved data didn't get anything, then this wouldn't run. And so there might not be a variable called save data. So I'm just defining it up here just to make sure that everything is okay and defined so that the script doesn't throw back any other issues. So what we can do is we can say if saved data is not equal to nil, so if there is saved data, then we want to load this data into the player. Now we know that this is going to be their currency, so what we can do is update their currency value to the saved data. So we can say currency dot value equals saved data. Okay. However, if there is not any saved data, so if saved data is equal to nil, we've put it in this else. What we want to do is we know that this player is a new player to the game, so new player. So we want to give them the default amount of cash when they start out. So we're going to say currency dot value equals, and then you can set this number to whatever you want, whatever number of whatever amount of currency you want a new player to receive when they first open the game. So if you just want them to have 50 cash starting out, keep this at 50. If you want them to have 500, set it to 500. But I'm going to keep mine at 50 because that's a fair amount. And we're also just going to print a new player to the game. And then over here, we're just going to print data loaded, because the data will have successfully been loaded into the player. So what we've done here is we've managed to create code which will load a player's data from the data store, and we're updating their value, their currency value. So what we want to do now is we want to create another event which will save the data whenever they leave the game and when the game shuts down. So to do this, we're going to use something called a player removing event. So what this will do is it will fire just when a player is about to leave the game, and we'll be able to save their data so that it's ready when they join the game next time. We're also going to have another event function which will run when the game is about to shut down, so that we can save the last player's data before the server shuts down and maybe accidentally wipes it. So to firstly get started, we're going to create an event for player removing. This is what it looks like. It says game.players.player removing connect function PLR. We're just going to change this argument to player again, just to make it a little bit less confusing for you. As I said earlier, the player over here is just a dummy sort of model for the player that is actually going to be leaving the game. So obviously we don't know the name of the player that's going to leave the game yet, so we have to use this dummy called player. So that this player is the player object of the player who's going to leave the game. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to save the data. So we do this by calling another, quite similar to get async, it's called set async. We're going to call that on the data store, and that will basically set a value in the data store, and it will save it. So whenever they're leaving, about to leave, we can save this data, and by the next time that they join, the data should be ready to be loaded with get async. So much more simple than what we've just done. To save the data, we just need to say data store, say colon set async, open bracket, close bracket, or parenthesis, and in here, what we're going to want to do, we're going to want to have that specific key again. Remember we had that ID over here earlier. What we can do is we can just take this line of code, copy it, and just paste it into this player removing event. So we've got our ID, we just want to specify the ID, and we also want to give the value of the currency, which is going to be updated, which is going to be set. So we want to say player.leaderstats, and then we want to have the currency name, so in square brackets, because we don't know the actual name of it. And then we also just want to say dot value. So what that's going to do is it's going to update the value of coins for that specific key. which of course is the ID variable up here. It's going to set the value and save it whenever someone leaves the game. Now, what about the last player in the game? Because we all know that when you're in a game and you're the last person in the game and you leave the game shuts down. If the game shuts down, then there is a chance that this script, which is saving the data, might not finish saving by the time it shut down. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a function called bind to close. Now this runs when the game, whenever a game is ready to shut down, this will run, and we can put some code to delay the server from shutting down, but we can kick all of the players currently in the game so that everyone will have gone and all the data should be saved, and then we can have a time delay just to make sure all the data is saved and ready for the players to rejoin. So to do this, we just have to say game.bind to close. Game :bind to close, and then we can just say in parenthesis function with another set of parenthesis and drop a line, and you've got this end down here. So it should look like this, and so this will be called when game is ready to shut down. We're waiting for any code inside of here to be executed, and once it is executed, the game will shut down. So we want to kick every single player in the game so that we can initiate this player removing event, which will save all the data. So to do this, we're going to say for I, player in pairs, and then inside of these parentheses, we're going to have all the players in the game currently. So we can say game.players :get players, and then do after this, and this is going to loop through every single player in the game, and we just want to check that if there is a player, so if player, then player : kick, and we can supply a message when they're being kicked to say this game is shutting down. So we're getting all the players in the game, looping through them. I is the number of times that it's looped through. So if it's looping through the second player, it would be 2. Player is the object of the current player we're looping through, and we're just checking to see if the player is still in the game. If they are, we're going to kick them by saying player : kick, and we're giving a message to let them know that the game is shutting down. Now remember that this is only going to run when the game is about to shut down, so it's just kicking all the players from the game before the game shuts down, and we're just going to also add a little time delay of about 5 seconds, just so that once they're all gone, we can make sure that all the data is saved and we are ready to shut down the game. So make sure that if you're following along with the tutorial that you've saved your data, saved your game. Make sure to click on save and save it somewhere. I'm just going to call mine data saving. And that is everything for the data saving. So let's go and test it out. What we're going to have to do first though is we're going to enable a few things just to make sure that we're able to test this out in play solo, and also because what happens is if you want to test data store, you have to publish your game to a place first. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to want to just click on file, publish to Roblox as, and then this screen's going to pop up, and you're going to want to just click on new place, and we're just going to call this data saving. I'm going to make mine public, and I'm also going to just update the preferred player count, and I'm also just going to make sure that the chat type is all good. Everything else seems cool. I'm going to create the place, and don't forget, if you've got your own game and you're adding this script in, then you can just save it to your original game. You're going to have to do the next step. So we're going to want to click on next, and you want to see this page where it's got the link to your game. So you're going to want to copy this link, or if you've already got your game, you want to click done, and you want to just find your game. What we're going to do is we're going to open up a web browser, and we're going to navigate to your game, and we're just going to go to your game's page. So we're going to paste this link into our web browser, and we're going to go to it, and this is the place where we just published to. So we're going to want to enable API access, and that will allow us to test out the data saving from Roblox Studio. So to do that, we're going to go and click on configure this place, In fact, we need to go and configure this game. And we want to check enable studio access to API services. This will allow us to just get async and set async from Play Solo. But a word of warning, if you're going to test this out, remember that this is going to be the same data store which you're setting to and getting from that is going to be live in your game. So if you have servers running, you may not want to test this in Play Solo. Of course, up to you. The best way to test is in a real Roblox game though. So let's go and test this out. Hope there'll be no errors, but if there are, we'll be able to solve them. Let's open up the output and clear it, and let's click on Play Solo. Okay, no errors so far, but what's happened is the output has printed new player to the game because we have loaded our data and there is no data currently saved, and so it's given us the default value of 50 coins. So what we're going to want to do now is just update this value as a test, and we're going to leave the game and rejoin to see if it saves. So I'm going to update this value to 999. I'm going to click on stop. There is a little bit of delay, and now don't worry, your studio isn't crashing or anything. The reason this is delaying is because the game is ready to shut down, just waiting a couple seconds before it returns to normal. This is the bind to close event, which is triggering when the game is about to shut down. It's kicking everyone from the game and it's waiting 5 seconds, so don't worry. I'm going to rejoin the game and hopefully we have 999 cash, which we do. You can see in the output it says data is loaded. So what's happened is it saved our data when we left the game, and now it has loaded our data to the new player. Now this should work in a normal Roblox game. I haven't yet to test it, but we shall go and test it now. Let's go click stop. Let's head back to our web browser. Once the game has reset, I'm going to go back to our web browser. I'm going to click on save to get back to our game. And we're going to click on play. So we're going to enter the game. We're going to give ourselves some cash using the developer console. And we're also just going to make sure that we can see everything printing in the output. And then we'll leave the game, rejoin, and hopefully our data will have saved. Now actually, what should happen is we should load in with 999 coins, because Studio and Roblox working together, saving the same data, because we've got API access turned on. The data which we saved from Roblox Studio should load in the client here. So let's see if that works. We're joining server, and you can see we have 999 cash. As I said, the Studio testing, which we just did, will update the data stores in every single live game. So it is a little bit, you need to be a little bit cautious when you're updating your data stores from Studio. So if we go into the console, you can say /console in the chat to bring this up, or you can use the new console. I'm going to use the old one for now. If this console isn't working by the time you're watching this video, just try saying new console and you will get a brand new console. So we're going to go to the old console. And you see it says data loaded here. And if we go into the server log, now only we can access the server log because we are the creators of the game. So don't try going into jailbreak and giving yourself a million cash, because it's not going to work. We're going to say game .players AlvinBlox, or your name, .leaderstats, .coins, .value equals, and let's just change this to 1337 and click enter, and you can see that the coins have updated. Let's go and leave the game, and let's go and just wait for this server to shut down. After 5 seconds it should go away. 4, 5, any moment now. There we go, it's been deleted. So we can enter a new server and see if it gets our data and loads it into our leader stats. Still waiting, and joining server. And you can see we've got our data, 1,377 coins loaded into the game, and as said, data loaded. So there we go, that is how we save data. We've now created the currency system which loads data, saves data, and initializes the leader stats folder in game. So that is a very basic currency system. Now let's go a little bit deeper and look at buying currency. So we're back here in Roblox Studio, and we're going to now work on buying currency. Now this is a little bit more advanced than data saving because it does actually include some data saving. What we're going to do, we're going to use developer products to allow us to purchase different amounts of cash, and then we will create a script which records each purchase, and when bought it will increase your currency value. So to do this, we're first going to want to head back to our games page so that we can create some developer products on the website. We're going to click on configure this place this time instead of configure this game, and you're going to want to click on the developer products tab. Now, if you've never heard of developer products before, it's a great way to monetize your game along with game passes. Now, a game pass is a purchasable item which you can only buy once, and it will grant you an everlasting item or booster in your game, which you can code. Now, a developer product is a bit different. Similar to a game pass, however, it can be bought multiple times. It can be bought as many times as you like. There's no limit on how many you can buy. An example of this is a stamina booster. You might want to program a cereal bar or something which gives you 10 health, and once you eat it, it's disappeared, you have to buy another. So you're allowed to keep on buying these stamina bars, and the same goes with currency. You can keep buying currency, and because you might run out, you might want some more. So this is why we use developer products, because you can buy them multiple times. So we're going to create a developer product here, and we're going to need to memorize an ID. Now you can see I have a developer product here on my game. Now this is one I created earlier, so we're just going to go ahead and create a new one. We're going to click on create new, and you're going to want to give your developer product a name. So we're going to be giving cash, so ours is going to give you 100 cash if you buy it. So I'm going to change this, I'm going to give the name, call it 100 cash, and you can give it a description if you really want, but it's not going to actually show up, so the players won't see it, so you don't actually need to. And you can also give a price in Robux. So for 100 cash in my game, I'm going to charge 10 Robux. Once you've done that, you want to give it an image. I'm just going to go and give it an image of one of my thumbnails, and I'm going to click on update once it's ready. Great. Now that's created here, and you can see it's added an item to our list. We've got our name of our developer product, 100 cash, how much it costs, and we've also got the ID of our developer product. Now this is going to be really important. So let's just keep this page open for now, and I'm also just going to copy this ID because you'll see why it's so important in a minute. Let's head back to Roblox Studio and get started on our developer products. So here we are again in Studio. We are going to create another script in a moment. What we're going to just do though is make sure we've got that ID copied, and we can begin work. So we're going to use the marketplace service. We're actually going to have a GUI button which will prompt the player to purchase the developer product, and then on the server side we'll have some code which will detect when a developer product is bought, and it will check which player has bought it, and we will give them the cash. So let's go and click on server script service again, make sure our game is saved, and click on script, and we're going to call this buy cash script. So in the script, it's going to allow the players to buy some cash. We are going to firstly want to define two services. The marketplace service, which will be used to handle the purchasing of the developer product. Marketplace service equals game :get service, and then whoops, I spelled it wrong. And then in parentheses we can say in speech marks marketplace service. You have to make sure that you spell it and capitalize it correct, else you'll get some errors. So make sure it looks like this. Let me just enlarge it a little bit. There we go. We also want to define the data store service once again, because we want to keep the receipts of the previous purchases in case they leave the game. We want to make sure that when they rejoin, for example, they still get their stuff. We can save the purchases. So we can say local data store service equals game :get service. Oops, I spelled it wrong again. And we can say data store service. Okay, so now that we've done that, we want to get our data store. Now remember, in the original currency script, we got our test data store. That's where we will store our currency and our saved currency. In this script, we're going to be saving purchase history, so receipts, previous purchases. We're going to want to just call this previous purchases. So previous purchases equals data store service colon get data store. Whoops, we did get descendants. Get data store. Open bracket, close bracket. Previous purchases. Okay, so we've just got our data store, and we're going to save purchase receipts so that in future we just know what they've bought, what each player's bought previously. And we also want to put our IDs in now. So for each ID there is a developer product which gives a certain item. So in our case we have a developer product which is going to give you 100 cash. So we need to make a variable for each developer product we have. So you can call it whatever you want. I'd recommend calling your variable for your IDs something which will tell you what it's going to give. So for example, 1_100_cash, okay, equals, and then you put your ID. So you give it a name and you put your ID. So I like to have a variable. You put here what you're going to get and you put your ID just to store it as a variable, so we don't have to keep putting IDs everywhere and have to keep checking what each ID attributes, what it gives you, for example. So make them all variables. If you create more developer products, keep making variables and write down what you're going to give and make it equal to the ID. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can actually get started on creating our callback function, which is process receipt. So we're going to say marketplace service dot process receipt equals function, open bracket, close bracket, or parenthesis with receipt in there. Now whenever a developer product is bought in the game, this callback function is going to fire. Any code inside of it will run, and the server's going to keep checking back to see whether it was a success or whether it's not finished yet, or if something went wrong. So we're going to want to, firstly, we've got this receipt here, this receipt argument, and this receipt is basically a table made up of 6 values. So the receipt, it has a purchase ID, it has a player ID, it has a product ID, it has a currency spent value, it also has a currency type value, and it also has a place ID where purchased value. So all of these different values make up the receipt, and it allows us to see a unique ID for the purchase, the player who purchased it, what did they buy, what did they buy it with, did they buy it with Robux, how much did they pay, what currency did they pay with. Obviously this is going to be Robux, but before we had ticks as well, we don't have that anymore. And we also have the place ID where this was purchased, so what game was it purchased in. All of these create a picture telling you where the player bought it, and it just tells you lots of little details about the purchase, about the transaction. We can use this to check to see if they've already bought it, whether they were in the process of buying it and then they accidentally left or disconnected, so we can pick it up and always have a receipt of this player's purchase. And we're going to want to save this to a data store. So we want to create an ID again. Okay, so we want to make sure that if they've already purchased it before, that we create a new purchase. Okay, we don't want them to have bought something and if they're trying to buy the same thing again. So we're going to just say local ID. This is our data store ID, our unique identifier, and we're just going to set this to receipt dot player ID dot dot, and then in speech marks we can have a hyphen dot dot receipt dot purchase ID. Now this is going to look something a bit like this. So the ID will be your player ID, and then hyphen, and then a weird looking receipt ID for your developer product, which looks a little bit like this. So you've got the unique identifier of the developer product and your player's unique identifier in their ID. Now you'll see why we're doing this in a minute, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually check if previous purchases Now remember, this is going to fire when a player buys a developer product. So if previous purchases get a sync ID, then this is either going to return true or false. So this will tell us, has it already been bought? Okay, and if it has, then the purchase has already been done. Okay, because we don't want the same purchase for the same item. Okay, for the same purchase ID, you can purchase it multiple times, but in this case, each time you purchase it, there's a different purchase ID. So if it's the same purchase ID, we don't want this to go through, because we know they've already purchased it. They've already bought this, so we want to create a separate transaction. So we can just return enum.productPurchaseDecision.purchase granted. Okay, what's going to our return? So we're just returning back to the script that this purchase has already been done, and if they want to buy another, we can let them. So what we now want to do is we know by the time they get to here, we know that the player wants to purchase another one. So they've already purchased it. So by the time this runs, they will have purchased it. So we know that they've just purchased the developer product. So we want to get the player that purchased this product. We can say local player equals game.players : get player by user ID. And then we can use the player ID from the receipt to identify them. So we can say receipt.player ID. We've now got the player which bought this developer product, and we want to check if they're still in the game, because if they've left the game, there's not going to be a player, and we won't be able to grant them their rewards. So we want to say if not player, then. So if not player, then we know that they've either left or disconnected. Okay, so we need to somehow give this to them when they rejoin, right? So this is why we've done this if statement. So if they've disconnected, we want to return enum.productPurchaseDecision.not processed yet. So we're still waiting to give them their rewards, but they're not currently in the game. So we need to wait until they next join the game. And so if they haven't got their rewards, then what we're going to do is we're going to give them to them next time that the player joins the game. However, if the player is in the game, we're able to give them their rewards right now. So what we can do is say else, and now in this huge block of code, we're going to want to give them their rewards. So we only have one developer product at the moment, so this will make our lives a bit easier because we only have to do this once. However, if you've got multiple developer products, say you've got 3, one gives 100 cash, one gives 250, and one gives 500, you're going to have 3 of these variables. You're going to have to do what we're about to do 3 times. So what we're going to have to do is say if receipts dot it's going to be product ID equals 100 cash, or the ID which is attributed to the variable 100 cash, then drop a line. Let's just get rid of these lines here. Drop a line, and then in here we know that they've bought 100 cash because we've checked their product ID, which they just bought, against the 100 cash ID up here. If you had multiple ones, you'd have to have 3 of these if statements, and you'd have to change each one to the different ID. So this one would probably be 250 cash if that's the variable you declare, and this one will probably be 500. You get the idea. So we only have one, so we only have to deal with one if statement. So we want to give them their cash. So to do this, we're going to say player dot leader stats, and then we're going to want to create a variable at the top here for the currency name again. So in our case, it's coins. We're going to want to then put in these square brackets currency name, and then we want to say dot value equals, and because we're updating the current value, we're going to paste this in and just say add 100. So we're taking their current value and updating it to what it currently is, plus 100. So this is going to give them 100 extra cash. So you want to copy this if statement and paste it and update the values. So that would be 250 or 500 depending on how much you give. And you want to change this variable as well if you have more than one developer product. But to keep it simple, we're only going to have one. So what we want to do now is update our data store and say that we have successfully made this purchase. So we can say data store set async, and then we want to say ID and then true. In fact, let's just change this to previous purchases. In the other script it's called data store, but in this script it's called previous purchases because that's the name of our data store which we gave. Let's also just wrap this in a pickle. Pickle function. Okay. Just so that in case something goes wrong, and let's do that at the top here with our get async. Let's just change this get async to success. Let's change this to success, and then we can say local success equals nil, and then we can say pickle function, and we can say success equals previous purchases get async ID, just in case something goes wrong. And what we can now do is return purchase granted to tell the script that everything went fine, we gave them their rewards, and the transaction went through. So we can say return enum dot product purchase decision dot purchase granted. So that is all of the server-side coding done for this developer product. I'm just going to zoom out, so if you want to copy it down or you missed something, pause the video and now's your time to copy it down. Okay, so what we've done the server side, we now just need to create a little GUI which will prompt the user with the developer product. But we also want to just create a nice little UI. We're going to go into the Roblox UI editor, click on Screen GUI, and then click on Text button. You're going to drag it to the side, wherever you want it to go. You're going to open up the properties window, make sure it's open, head back to UI, select text scaled. You're going to call it 100 cash. We're going to give it a name of 100 cash. And we're also just going to change the styling. Remember, you can change yours to however you want it to look. I'm just going to make mine look good. Okay, I've got my button, and we're now just going to insert a local script inside of this button so that we can prompt the player whenever they click it. So we're going to want to have a activated event. So script.parent.activated :connect open bracket function open bracket close bracket or parentheses. We're at the top. We want to get the marketplace service. So local marketplace service equals game :get service marketplace service. We just need to say local player equals game.players.local player. So we're getting our player, and then we just want to prompt the purchase whenever this is clicked. So we can say marketplace service :prompt product purchase player, and then you just want to get the ID of your developer product. Now, because this is the 100 cash button, we want to get the 100 cash ID and paste it in here. If your button was 500 cash, you'd want to update the ID in here with the correct ID for 500 cash. So they can't all be the same, they have to be different if you have different developer products. Okay, so that is everything done for the buying. Let's open up the output, run the game, and hope that everything works fine and then no errors, but if there are, we can fix them. So we've run the game, data's been loaded, we're going to buy 100 cash, it prompts us, we're going to click buy now. The process receipt should run, and there we go, it gave us an extra 100 cash. We now have 1,437. If you didn't see that, you can click it again, click buy now, and it's updated to 1,537. Let's leave the game. Remember, it's delaying because of bind to close for 5 seconds. Let's re-enter the game, and you can see the data saved, and we've now got 1,537 coins. So you've just monetized your game with developer products and a currency system. Now players in your game have the ability to buy currency, but what if they want to spend their currency on other items? Well, in a future video, I'm going to be showing you how to create a shop which will allow your players to buy items with the in-game currency, and keep an eye out for that because that's coming soon. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, AlvinBlox, if you want to find more quality Roblox scripting tutorials for free to help you master a Roblox scripting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.